Recording. Okay. So firstly, I'd like to acknowledge that Macedon Ranges Shire Council is located on the lands and waterways of the Dja Dja Wurrung, Taungurung, and Wurundjeri Boiwurrung peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this land and waterways. Council recognises their living cultures and ongoing connection to country and pays respect to their elders past, present, and emerging. And today I acknowledge that both Brad and I are on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung land, Brad in Toowoomba, and I'm here in Macedon. So as you may know, today is the 7th of September, which is National Threatened Species Day. So we invited Brad Blake to come and present on his work with greater gliders. Brad works, his business is Procon Pest and Wildlife Management. And we're going to hear about his work and genetic testing and his high-tech nest boxes that he uses. Over to you, Brad.
Cool. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, so basically I've been running Procon Pest and Wildlife Management since 2015. We do a lot of, you'll have to excuse me as well. I've got a bit of a cold, so I'm going to be coughing through this. But anyway, we basically, we control invasive species with a vision of threatened species recovery. And we've been lucky enough to work with Greening Australia and a few other organisations over the past 6 years on greater glider recovery, basically working out what we can do to halt the decline of the species. So yeah, tonight I'm basically going to be talking about the recovery efforts we've been undertaking over the past 6 years for the greater glider. And again, most of those projects have been a collaboration with Drew Leapier from Greening Australia, and some local stuff as well with local government, Macedon Ranges Shire Council a few years ago with William Terry and BioLinks. We've put up some nest boxes in the Macedon Ranges and Hepburn Shire for BioLinks Australia. They're a great organisation. Um, so yeah, sort of a brief overview of greater gliders. For those that don't know, you're probably all aware of the greater glider, but they are Australia's largest gliding species. They basically only eat eucalyptus leaves. However, sort of juveniles do eat flowers and buds as well. Sort of when they're emerging from the pouch, I have observed them eating flowers and buds, but I've never seen an adult doing that, which is an interesting observation. So a little bit more about them. These two here that you can see are the northern subspecies, and you can see their face structure and their ears are a lot bigger and different than the Victorian or the southern subspecies. This one here on the right, this is the white form, and this individual was actually injured on a roadside, and it was rehabilitated, and we were lucky enough to be able to release it up near Newgee. We installed 6 nest boxes around its release location, and yeah, as far as we know, it sort of stayed in that area to use those nest boxes. So that was a cool little side project. And this one here on the left is one that I actually picked up on the side of a road. Thought it had been hit by a car or glided into a car, but look, it seemed fine. And I put it back in a tree and it climbed up the tree, which is cool. A couple more photos. I've been following greater gliders around the bush since I was a little kid growing up in East Gippsland, and I've sort of had a strong passion for them for a very long time. And when I was a really young kid, they were actually quite a common species up north of Bairnsdale. It was nothing to see sort of 20 to 30 in a night, whereas now you're lucky to find a couple. So, yeah, basically the distribution of the greater glider was once common across all forests, all eastern, southeastern Australian forests, and has declined by 80%. I would say it's more than 80% after the fires of 2020. And yeah, so those fires, after those fires, it was listed as endangered, which sort of opened up a few funding opportunities for us to design nest boxes, thermal quality nest boxes, which reflect 70% of the radiant heat from the sun. And we found that gliders during summer hot periods were staying in these new design nest boxes more so than the old design of just some plywood. And so why are greater gliders endangered? Well, it's basically in Victoria, they're pretty much endangered for, the initial reason is overlogging, basically land clearing. And because of this, further threats get put on the species. Um, yeah, very little suitable habitat remains. So basically, you will find decent hollow densities on gullies within forests, but outside of those gully areas, the hollow density really depletes, and you don't find greater gliders in those areas that have zero hollows. Um, so yeah, you can probably see this big. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but there's a big peppermint gum there on the left. They're the kind of size trees that a forest requires for greater gliders to persist. Um, yeah. Yeah, so outside of those gullies, like I said, you get to the top of a ridge and there's very few hollows in those areas, and they're probably missing a lot of genetic flow between isolated populations as well. So a fair bit of inbreeding would be happening. This is us in East Gippsland after the fires. We installed 420 nest boxes in East Gippsland after the fires on the edge of the fire scar. And it was a pretty heartbreaking job, actually, because, a lot of the hollow bearing trees were gone. And, only young trees were left standing. So, yeah, that's obviously why they were listed as endangered after those fires. Prescribed burning, I'm sure you're all over, prescribed burning, planned burning, and what it can do to forest structure. This hollow here on the left is, a pretty low intensity planned burn. However, the fire still gets up the inside of these trees and burns out these hollows. And in all the years I've been searching for greater gliders and detecting them, I've only ever seen one greater glider ever in a burnt out hollow. I just don't think their claws grip to the charcoal very well, and they just don't use them. So we've been sort of working in with government in some areas and installing nest boxes. Can you see my cursor? Yeah. So anyway, that's the climber up the tree there. They go up pretty high. On the edge of these sort of burned areas, that's where we start installing nest boxes. Some of the burned out trees are a little bit dangerous to actually get up sometimes. And then obviously some, barbed wire is probably not a huge issue for greater gliders, but nevertheless, this is a pretty disturbing photo. Barbed wire does kill a lot of other gliding species as well. Like squirrel gliders are affected by barbed wire fences. Um, we've sort of lobbied the government in certain areas of Victoria to stop illegal firewood collection. This is happening down in South Gippsland. It's pretty bad. It's a commercial operation collecting firewood, and you can see up there at the top of those photos, some of those trees are actually hollows, and some of them also had greater glider scat at the bottom of them. So, it basically just goes to show it. If you see local forest getting destroyed by illegal firewood collection, then definitely raise your hand up and tell someone, because of our actions here, we've actually had 12, I think it was 12 prosecutions from illegal firewood collection in these state parks in greater glider habitat, mind you. So another thing that's sort of happening, this all sounds so negative as well, but it's hard to get around the fact that these species are still declining at quite a rapid rate as well. There's no sort of nice way to put it. I'm sure you're all aware of it. But hyperpredation is something that we see time and time again. So basically, if you've got a small isolated population of any species, but we'll talk about greater gliders, and this is what happened in the Wombat State Forest. A pair of powerful owls successfully raised two chicks, which is great. Also a threatened species. We love powerful owls. However, there was a population of 6 greater gliders just holding on, and within a couple of years, they were all gone. So hyperpredation is a really sort of a worrying process that happens when you're isolating populations by logging or fire or whatever it is. There's a lot of talk around climate change. Greater gliders are definitely going to feel the effect of climate change in the next 30 to 50 years. They don't like hot weather. They really struggle in extreme heat periods. Hence why we sort of designed a nest box that could handle those thermal, that sun blazing down in the afternoon. We did some temperature reading of nest boxes, and at 8:30 at night, the box was still 32 degrees during extreme temperatures. So that's why we sort of developed these boxes to reflect the radiant heat, and that's working well so far. Well, obviously nest boxes is what we're kind of talking about. If you can see a nest box here in the picture, there's another one up here. So in 2018, we decided to give it a crack because no one had had greater gliders successfully using nest boxes. And I worked out that they weren't putting the nest boxes high enough. And greater gliders really like using hollows that are high up in trees. So we employed these crazy climbers, and we installed 40 nest boxes in South Gippsland initially. And within a couple of weeks, we had greater gliders using the nest boxes. We installed cameras on the greater glider on the nest boxes, and it was great to see. And some gliders actually used the boxes for 6 months straight. We had one particular glider that had a white tail, and we installed that nest box in a tree with natural hollows, and it still preferred to use the nest box. And if you've ever seen into a dirty hollow in a tree, you can see why they would prefer a nice dry place to hang out. There's obviously concerns around, the longevity of these nest boxes. We've done some trials, with water dripping on them for extended periods, and they've got 7 coats of paint. So they've got 3 coats of a non-toxic fire retardant sealer, which actually, when they're doing planned burns, if the flames lap against the bottom of the box, it actually won't catch alight. And then on top of that, it's got 3 coats of this special reflective paint. I've pretty much already said what we've been up to, but Greening Australia have done marvelous things down in South Gippsland with, locking stock, cattle and sheep out of areas, and creating corridors between populations, which is something that, I'm really passionate about, is these corridors. And BioLinks Australia do a lovely job of that too in our local area, and so do Landcare. But that is the way of the future, is connecting these isolated populations. And that's the idea of the nest boxes too. You can use nest boxes to link 2 different isolated populations through an area of forest without a decent hollow density. So the idea there is to get genetic flow between 2 isolated populations, because as far as we know, we don't think that greater gliders are traversing those larger areas. But this is why we're working with the Federation Uni PhD student, Cassie Briggs. She's developing the markers for greater gliders, and then that will allow us to, look at different populations and say, for instance, one population is very inbred and on the brink of extinction. Well, we might not, unfortunately, pump money into a population like that. We might look at a population that can be recovered successfully. And let the others walk the plank, unfortunately. So another thing that we've been working on over the years is thermal drones, using thermal drones to locate threatened species. And it takes the pressure off our legs, for starters, and it takes a lot of the safety aspect, or it adds a lot of safety aspect to these projects. And some of the areas where we look for greater gliders are just impenetrable forest. And when you try to look up, you can't. You're covered in ferns and things. So, we got these guys in Fieldmaster Systems to, develop a system with a camera and a light, and we flew the drone over the forest. I think this is a video here, so I'll try to play it. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to talk over the top of it, but we'll give it a crack. But anyway, this method of detection just really was a game changer for us. We went into areas where we'd only been able to detect a couple of gliders to detecting 20 to 30 with the drone in a small space of time. We also use the drone for koala surveys and for pest management as well, for feral pigs and deer and things like that. I don't know how to turn that down if that's too annoying for
Oh,
anyone.
I can't hear anything. Is it playing, Brad?
Oh yeah, is it not coming through?
Oh, no, it's not coming through.
I just watched a minute of it.
Sure, it was great.
Not sure.
It
I'm
might be
not sure
coming
why
up
that's.
on a different screen, Brad, because we can still see
We can see
the
your
Oh, that's-
presentation.
present. Yeah.
hang on, here we go. How's that?
No. Oh,
Wait a second.
yep,
Yep.
yep. It's poor. Oh yeah, yeah, got it.
Still going? Like, look at the camera on this thing. It's crazy. You can see a greater glider there.
Yeah.
So basically, what we found was that they were not worried about the drone whatsoever. They very rarely look at the drone when we're up above them. Whereas from the ground, they usually pause and they won't move much. That's a brush-tailed possum, that one. But yeah, we found it was a very good method for finding them and keeping them, even with the white light, they were not phased one little bit. They continued to feed, they continued to go about their daily business. Oh,
It's back to your presentation now.
yeah, and I can't I can't stop the video.
Oh, we can't see the video.
It's all I can hear. Can you hear it?
No.
It's very loud for me.
Oh, okay.
The music's still going.
I didn't get
Anyway,
any
stop
music.
now.
Oh, yeah.
Righto. So anyway, that was just a really good method for surveying, and every chance we get now, we actually trying to employ the drone to do that kind of work, because and we actually tried to get it passed in court as well, through another organisation for Vic Forest to have to fly logging coops with a thermal drone before logging, because we did some work for Vic Forests, well, for government anyway, that we're looking at logging coops, and the vegetation was so thick you can only walk on a track, and then if you don't get 10 gliders, they could log the forest. So with this method, you can just fly straight over the top and yeah, see what's going on. So as far as genetics go, we've been wandering around the forests throughout Eastern Australia, looking for scat for the PhD student. And she is doing her PhD on the genetic diversity of greater gliders. So I think we've collected about 360 or so little shits, basically. And we've been giving them to her, and she's doing the genetic work on it. It's been a great little thing. This next video is playing. All right.
We can't see it.
Yeah, it's just loud for me. That's all right.
Oh,
So this is us, obviously installing nest boxes. Some of the climbers and myself and Drew installing nest boxes. Having a laugh. Me and my model shoot. These are the backpacks we use to cart them through the forest, because they're actually quite heavy. As you can see, they're pretty large boxes. And you can even see there that reflective nature of the paint is reflecting even in that low light. This is pretty wild. Hopefully this works. You see that? No video?
it's still.
Play.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's moving now.
Is it a delay from
It's like
I'm halfway through
it's
the
like a
video
bunch
now.
of stills rather than a video.
Okay.
It's working.
Could be just my internet here as well. But anyway, it just shows the tree climbers climbing up and installing nest boxes, and how high they go. We try to get them as high as possible. Some of them are sort of 36 meters in some of these grey gums. It costs a fair bit of money. The climbers aren't cheap, but how many boxes they can do in a day is actually quite amazing. I think it took us 2 weeks or 3 weeks to install 300 nest boxes. So we actually put 300 nest boxes in one part of the forest in East Gippsland after the fires. And our idea behind that was to flood the area. So just we want all species to use the nest boxes, not just greater gliders. So we want, powerful owls to be able to take out ringtails and brushtails and sugar gliders and whatever else, and not just specifically target greater gliders. And that's kind of the way we've gone about it. Can you see that map now? Is that
Not yet.
Yeah, so that's just the GPS locations of the nest boxes in one site we did, and there's 2 boxes on every tree there. So, you can sort of see here the area. And I haven't got too many photos from the local area. We put in 20 boxes for biolinks last year, which was great because it was on a edge of a patch of greater gliders in the Wombat State Forest. And we've got a project coming up soon for a land care group installing nest boxes in the local area as well. So it'd be great to see some populations, some isolated populations in the Wombat State Forest with this kind of hollow density, with this kind of box density. And we're sort of thinking that that they possibly could last 20 to 30 years, these boxes, with the amount of effort and paint gone into them, which we'll see what happens. But initial tests are pretty promising. Just one of the greater gliders in one of the nest boxes. So these are the cameras that we install on the nest boxes. Some of these photos are 30 meters up in the tree, and they're 4G cameras, so they actually send us the images every morning. We can see what's being used in the boxes, and the species that use the boxes don't care about the cameras. They're not alarmed by the cameras. We use black flash cameras in those situations, not to blind them at night. Some of the observations that we gathered from this nest box monitoring was quite amazing, really. Like, we had a female use one of the nest boxes as a maternal den. So basically she left the joey in the nest box and would go out night after night foraging, come back in. And we eventually saw the mother give the joey its first eucalypt leaves, which was pretty amazing to see, that the mother actually brought the eucalypt leaves to the joey and passed them over for its first taste. So that's the kind of insight you can kind of gather from having a camera on these boxes. And it's definitely a non-invasive way to do it. I don't believe in hinged nest boxes. I don't think once we put a nest box up, we should go and disturb them too much. So cameras are a great way to do it. Having said that, you do have to go and take the camera down at one point. And you got to be careful not to scare the gliders out of the box when you do that. Some more photos of different individuals using the boxes. We actually trialed a lot of different shaped entrance holes, circles, squares, triangles, and we found there was no difference in occupancy rates. So we ended up just going for the triangle design nest box, which is actually the easiest way to build a nest box because you just cut a piece off the end. That's the sort of model that we've gone with. So competition, we've seen some amazing stuff. Like I said, we had a crimson rosella in a nest box with a boobook owl, which was really interesting because boobook owls don't roost in hollows unless they're nesting. So this owl was nesting with chicks, with eggs, with a rosella in there. The other thing that we've noticed is sugar gliders are bullies. So a sugar glider will scare greater gliders away, and they're the size of one of a greater glider's legs, basically, which is interesting. So this is kind of like what Greening Australia sort of put together, these kind of parts. And, it's basically just saying to revegetate, gullies and hills and creating those corridors between properties, like neighbouring properties as well. Like connecting forests is just really important. Like I said before, reporting illegal firewood collection is another big one for me. We all need firewood. And but it's not the right place to do it. People don't understand where they're getting the firewood from. There are designated firewood areas without hollows. So anyway, continue the Crown land. So this is another thing what I was saying about exclusion, stock exclusion. Like this is the difference here. I mean that bush is almost ruined from cattle and sheep being in there. A simple fence. This is what BioLinks and Landcare and Greening Australia are great at is doing this kind of restoration works and keeping the forest intact basically. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You've got any questions, anyone? I can't stop this video, sorry. It's been playing the whole time. I don't know where it's coming from. So I might just right.
Teresa, you've got your hand up. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I'd just love to know more about the sites in the Wombat that you have been putting boxes in. What part of the Wombat and what?
So up top of Kangaroo Creek. So the top of Kangaroo Creek, there was a guy, I've forgotten his name. He had that really nice garden up there. He's gardening Australia shows and things. Anyway, he allowed us to put some nest boxes
John Cable
on his
and
property.
Jill. Was it
Sorry?
John Cable and Jill Teschendorf? No, it's another one.
No, I don't know. It's an amazing garden. It's like a award-winning garden. But anyway, because we sort of, there are greater gliders up through that creek. So again, it's basically about trying to extend that hollow density out to give them a bit more room to expand. So the next project coming up is also in that area, back down into Kangaroo Creek. And again, if the creek line has a good hollow density, we try to get the nest boxes on the outer edge of that. We'll put a few on the gully, and that way it educates the gliders that what a nest box is. And then when it moves outside of that high hollow density area, they can actually find refuge, and it sort of creates a larger area for them to persist, basically.
Thank you. Kangaroo Creek, do you mean there's bunches of Kangaroo Creek all around this area? So
Spring Hill
not
Road.
The one...
So like.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, where Kangaroo Creek, is it Emu Creek? I think Emu Creek runs into Kangaroo Creek up there and crosses the road there. Basically just north of that is that initial nest box job, and then we're going to try to connect the southern sort of area with nest boxes as well. And I have spoken to Dika a while ago about a nest box program, and hopefully someone there can find some funding at some point, because there are some areas that we could connect quite easily and, like I said, get that genetic flow happening.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear about, hear more about those areas, because then we could maybe put in grants and things like that. So yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, look, I've been in the process of writing a management plan for the Wombat State Forest for about 2 years, and I haven't finished it yet. It's
Wow.
I've just been flat out with a lot of other work, but basically, when I finish this management plan, I'd like to set it around. And there's a couple of places. I mean, when we build the nest boxes, they're quite expensive because I've got to pay staff, but we are talking to some men's sheds as well that potentially could build nest boxes. But I have had some problems with, screws sticking out and that kind of thing in the past. So I'd like to get it done properly, which is always a bit of a concern.
You need Castlemaine Women's Shed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, nothing sexist. This is what they're called. anyone and everyone.
Yeah,
we've had some working bee days, like with groups of people to build nest boxes, but again, there's they kind of come out like they're going to fall apart sometimes. So maybe we do need the women's shed.
Yeah.